All right, are you ready to rock and roll for our first episode?
Ready.
All right.
Of 2021.
2021. Hello, and welcome to The Pouch, the podcast equivalent of a brain freeze that aims to take a not-so-serious look at the week in Australian news and politics. I'm Greg. Here we go again with the News Alert Savage.
And I'm Jake. New lockdown. Who dis? Farr-wharton. On today's episode, we talk eating bats, playing the odds, and singing a song.
And Jake, while we're as snug as a bug in this proverbial rug, I want to know, does putting I didn't have that on my bingo card for 2021 on my bingo card disqualify me from playing, or does it make me a modern-day Nostradamus?
Look, I think it makes you a modern-day Nostradamus. Spoiler alert, I also I had wearing a mask on my bingo list.
Did you?
It's just I thought I was actually going to become a bandito.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? When we were doing, the masks was such a taboo thing to be wearing during the bushfires, and now they're just everywhere. It's such a common sight. So many kids are growing up just with seeing hundreds of people wearing masks. Anyway,
it's become part of the zeitgeist, Greg.
It is. It's part of the zeitgeist. Jake and I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we're podcasting today, and we recognise the continuing connection to land, water, and community. We pay respect to elders past, present, and emerging.
Oh, sorry, my line. And our...
It's a new script. You'll get used to it.
And our thoughts today are sorry, that's more somber. And our thoughts today are with all of those people being affected by the Western Australian bushfires, really anyone affected by the rising floodwaters and those going to lockdown again, or indeed coming out of lockdown. We encourage everyone to listen to the relevant advice, obviously, and stay safe, hey? And also Anthony Albanese, good old Albo, who was involved in a car accident in Marrickville last Friday. It's what you get up to when you go to Marrickville. You try the steak, you have a little car crash.
Yeah, it was a big car crash apparently.
Yeah, it was actually quite bad.
Yeah.
But he spent the night in the Prince Alfred Hospital, and he's now resting easy at home, doing what Labor politicians do, and feasting on painkillers.
Is that what they do?
No, I don't.
I think one of them does anyway.
Absolute non sequitur. Absolute non sequitur.
Our shout-outs today are for Sarah Shamshiri, who was the final winner of mug or sticker, scoring herself a mug, which, as she mentioned to me via email, she will receive just in time to not be able to show it off to her friends over the Christmas and New Year's break. In fact, speaking of break, she received the mug and it was broken, so I have to resend it to her. We thank you for your patience during this terrible, terrible time, Sarah. Yes. That's you.
Your internet is a smidge blippy.
That's all right. Don't panic too much, because I am just recording.
I wasn't sure how much time I had to leave.
Right.
In order to jump to the next one. Anyway, and yes, thank you to Kevin Delisle for becoming our first $10 a month patron subscriber. Honestly, we cannot thank you enough. And look, if you would like to join Kevin in being one of the best people on the planet, some highly sought after the Pouch the Podcast merchandise, you can head over to patreon.com/thepouch the podcast and choose from as little as $3 per month. $3 per month.
Nothing.
Goes a long way. It's not even a single coffee, Greg.
No.
We used to be told with those World Vision things, you can save a little child for as little as $1 a day. That's a coffee. Well, this isn't even a coffee. It's not even a coffee, guys.
Not even
in today's standards.
Not even a baby chino.
No, it's not even exactly baby chinos. Starbucks. I mean, I don't know how much they are at Starbucks, but I presume it's like $70, and it tastes awful. But it tastes consistently awful. You can go to any Starbucks in the world and get a consistently awful. Anyway, they're not a sponsor.
I think you're missing the point, Jake. The point is that regardless of whether you even spent that money on a coffee, even if you did that, you wouldn't be able to hear your voice.
That's true. It's the one drawback in buying coffee.
Yeah.
It's that you don't get to hear us. So, yes, thank you very much to Kevin, and thank you very much to Greg for pulling me back into line there.
Yep.
And please do go to patreon.com/thepouchthepodcast to become a patron.
All right. Well, Jake, we've got a new lineup for our podcast, right? So we used to sort of just choose some stories and go through those stories one by one. We've tried to add a little bit of structure to those. So the structure for the show really goes a little bit like we have a bit of a warm-up where I choose a story and Jake chooses a story that he's interested in. Then we're going to get into some federal politics and we choose a couple of sort of headline stories there. And then we get into some state politics to try and make sure that we're not being biased too much to the East Coast here, which we realise that we tended to do as well. So getting straight into the warm-up, Jake, the CFA has attracted more than 2,000 new volunteers following Black Summer fires. The Country Fire Authority in Victoria had more than 1 million hectares being burnt last year, 11 firefighters losing their lives in the bushfires in total. The CFA have reported more than 2,000 new volunteers, with about 1/3 of those being women. This is up from 15% female participation among CFA volunteers in recent years. This is still a shortfall, though, according to its 2019 and 2020 annual report. The organisation lost 3,500 firefighters, the largest drop since 2019. And we've talked about this on the show before, just saying that following those bushfires, lots of stress, lots of PTSD, lots of, not really the sort of place where if you're a family person, I can see why people aren't really, diving in there to get it. But thank you so much to all of those people who are jumping in and volunteering. You used to be a volunteer, didn't you?
Yeah, and I'm on the roster to go through my training in the coming months for my local as well. But the interesting thing here is that a lot of the rural volunteer fire brigade and firefighters are they're older. They're not getting any younger.
Yeah.
And when you have such a prolonged period, that's obviously going to wear on you. And a lot of these, they have spoken previously. I don't know that we've discussed it on here, but commentators have been talking for a while of this looming crisis of the older generation that have they were just the local guys, the local teams, local men and women, I should say, not just guys, but local men and women who became the original rural fire brigades, who quite often started their local fire brigades. They're either reaching or coming close to, or indeed in this case have reached with the attrition of 3,500 firefighters. Many of them have reached that age where it's time to, no longer fight fires.
Yeah.
Fight fires in your household.
It's such a fascinating situation, isn't it? It's a bit like Wikipedia. I've heard people talk about Wikipedia being the experiment that should have failed when really it was a huge success. And when you think about the fact that, there's there's thousands of volunteers across Australia willing to put their lives on the line to fight bushfires and to keep people and property safe, it sort of feels like a bit like an experiment that should have failed, and it's been tremendously successful, doesn't it? So very much true heroes of the modern era.
Absolutely. Not every hero wears a cape, Greg.
No, but they do eat spinach.
Peanut butter.
You have a story for us, Jake.
I do, and to me, this is the most hilarious from my perspective, because I just like I like it when people are like really, really petty for no reason. I just really enjoy awkward humor.
Right.
That's my bag.
Okay.
Black humor, awkward humor, that's my bag. And it's really quite interesting. There was an advertisement over the last couple of weeks from the retailer BCF, or Boating, Camping, Fishing, that shows a man eating a bat sandwich. And it's being investigated by Australia's advertising watchdog. The ad, which has been viewed more than 250,000 times on YouTube, and I saw it on commercial TV probably several handfuls of time.
I haven't seen it.
No, well, I'm actually just thinking, I wonder whether it is, just a Queensland ad. But no, nonetheless, the Advertising Standards Bureau said, quote, Ad Standards has received a number of complaints about the BCF summer campaign commercial and is in the process of assessing these complaints to see if they raise an issue.
Yeah.
But yeah, look, it was a little bit funny, because essentially BCF, they were saying, in this ad, they were saying, look, because somebody ate a bat, alluding to the emergence.
Were they alluding to
no,
coronavirus in this ad?
They did. So they were alluding to the emergence of coronavirus by way of eating a bat. But essentially, look, it had a great message. It was essentially, look, it was saying, look, somebody ate a bat, therefore you can't go internationally. So why not, holiday at home, holiday locally, go out and get a tent and camp, go out and get a kayak and go and have some. Look, I thought it was a really funny ad, and I just love the fact that people are up in arms about,
I think that's a bit of a read the room situation, to be frank.
Maybe,
I don't know. That's pretty crazy. Yeah, hopefully it's not the corporations.
If it was just in Queensland and it was just a Queensland ad, and this is well pre the lockdown that occurred just over the weekend, because of the fact that we haven't really had a lockdown since the national lockdown, that is probably really a reading the room situation. But because many states have had it significantly harder than Brisbane has in that regard.
Absolutely. Now, Jake, we're going to get into the federal politics story. We haven't had a chance to chat about this yet, this being the first show of 2021. On New Year's Eve, I believe, Scott Morrison decided that he was going to send a message out on Facebook, Twitter, whatever everyone's using these days.
Yep, face tweet.
Tweetbook. Yep. And certainly not Parler. And and so this is about the Advance Australia Fair had one of the words changed, and he announced it on New Year's Eve in an attempt to bring some joy, bring some good news to everyone after watching the fireworks on ABC, which were tremendously awkward.
Were they?
Yeah, they were pretty awkward. I thought they were pretty awkward. Like, they were great. Like, it was great, but it was still pretty awkward. I think the biggest thing with the New Year's Eve stuff, just to sidetrack us a little bit, is that last year during New Year's Eve, everyone was sort of freaking out because of the bushfires. So you couldn't really enjoy yourself because you knew that there was just so much of Australia on fire and so many people freaking out, people losing their lives, all that sort of stuff. This year, it was a bit like, well, the rest of the world has just, really fallen to rubbish with this whole coronavirus situation. So who are we to be sitting here sort of celebrating and have a really good time? So as much as it was a good time and we sat around and sort of, said some things that we were grateful for throughout the year and all that sort of stuff, it was still just a bit awkward. And I felt like that awkwardness permeated through the television screen during the ABC fireworks. You're sort of watching these enormous fireworks that cost millions and millions of dollars. And you're just going, really, are we celebrating, with thousands and thousands of people dying every single day across the world with this coronavirus situation? It just felt a bit awkward. So I don't think it was the presenter's fault. I don't think it was the musician's fault. I don't think it was the producer's fault. I just think it was just what do you call it? Like a juxtaposed style of celebration. But in amongst all of that, Scott Morrison has announced that we've changed a word in the national anthem, and it's not Gert. Jake, hit us with the big ones. What is the news on this?
Well, look, it's very exciting. Scott Morrison solved racism, and no,
it did.
Clearly being hyperbolic. Look, there was a point of contention. There's many points of contention in the national anthem. As part of the vestiges of our colonial past. It was the New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian who pointed it out, after obviously several Indigenous groups pointing it out for some years. Gladys Berejiklian did point it out during NAIDOC week in November last year that the premise of Australia being young and free, from the line, for we are young and free, it's probably, not factually accurate. In the same way that we're actually not girt by sea, we're girt by several oceans.
Girt by sand.
Yeah, girt by sand, also rocks.
Yeah.
But no, we are not young and free. We have the oldest enduring the planet in the Indigenous Australians, the Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander people. So when Gladys Berejiklian raised that a few months ago, she made the suggestion, as have many before her and since her, that we change for we are young and free to we are one and free.
Yes.
Suggesting that we are united as a people.
Yes.
So those words were changed officially.
Yep.
by Prime Minister Scott Morrison. He said that the change, quote, takes away nothing, but adds much.
Oh, that's good. It's a good line.
So, which is it is a great line. I love that. Of course, it is a little bit galling to me, Greg. Just a little bit galling to me that Scott Morrison felt that he had the powers to change a line in the national anthem when the last time that, Greg, was in 1984.
Yes.
And it followed a plebiscite, Greg. It followed a plebiscite.
Right, so he's just going around willy-nilly changing words.
He's just like,
he's out of control.
I'm just going to do this.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this. I'm going to sign this order, this executive order, if you will, and it's going to change a word in the national anthem, and everyone's just going to have to abide by it.
It's dictatorship, Jake.
Yeah.
It's gone crazy.
Look, I wouldn't say it's dictatorship, Greg, but I would say it's the beginnings of dictatorship.
Yeah, he's just going to go through and add Scott all the way through it. It's just going to go, Australians all let us rejoice, for I am Scott and free. That's what it's going to be.
Yeah.
This is where it's heading. Yeah. It's a slippery slope.
Yeah,
it's a slippery Scotty slope.
Scottly slope. I like that. Look, it's a little bit of history on the Australian National Anthem. As I mentioned, 84. It was changed following a plebiscite to the Advance Australia Fair. Yep. It's an old song. Advance Australia Fair is an old song. It was performed back in 1878, as far back as 1878, by Jessica Mauboy. the renowned time traveller Jessica Mauboy. By the composer Peter Dodds McCormick.
Oh yeah,
and back in 1984, it replaced, possibly one of the greatest songs in the world, "God Save Queen."
Oh, I was going to YMCA. Yes,
God Save the Queen.
Yes, very exciting. I know that as part of this, obviously, Jake, there's division amongst the nation in this particular story. And in one story by Jessica Kidd on ABC News, patrons visiting Parramatta, which of course is the hub of strong opinion, well-considered opinion, were asked about their opinions on the change, with 30-year-old Bobby commenting that it shouldn't be changed. He said, I know where she's coming from. This is Gladys Berejiklian. I know where she's coming from in being supportive to Aboriginals, but at the same time, it's been there for years. It's iconic, so you can't really change something like that, he said. Well, Bobby, good news. You can change something like that. Yeah. Anyway, we'll try and get Bobby on the show to find out what he thinks now that it has been changed.
A lot of people were actually very upset with Bobby because he'd actually been wearing the same Ralph Lauren polo shirt for the last 40 years.
Yes,
in fact,
he has.
40 years. Yeah. And a lot of the locals were actually very upset that he'd actually just gone and willy-nilly changed into a plain black T-shirt, not too dissimilar from the one that I am wearing today.
Yes.
And yes, after 40 years. He just changed it willy-nilly. I mean, it was just crazy. People were very upset, and I think people are going to have to come to terms with it, because it is a very important thing that look.
Took me a minute to figure out where you were going with this, but yes.
He does not exercise as much as he used to, and the black hides the growing girth. Okay. Everyone has a bit of corona cushion. It's okay to hide it.
All right. Speaking of corona cushion, China.
I do love a good segue, Greg.
They're very good.
Just adore a good segue.
They are good. Now, talk us through what's happening with China. I know that at the moment there's a lot of talk about how our relationships with China is basically just going to be continuing to go backwards during 2021, and we promise that we will keep you up to date on all of those events, which are very, very exciting. However, this one is about China giving access to the World Health Organization officials investigating the origins of COVID-19. Tell us what's happening here, Jake.
Yeah, so China has been requested very strongly.
Strongly. I do like a good strongly request.
From Australia's Foreign Minister Marise Payne that they allow access to the World Health Organization officials that are investigating the origins and spread of COVID-19. Maurice Payne said that they should enable this, quote, without delay. Essentially, early last week, the head of the World Health Organization, the World Health Organization, said that he was, quote, very disappointed that China had still not authorized the entry of a team of international coronavirus experts. Quote, we hope that the necessary permissions for the WHO team, better than the A team, the WHO team, travel to China can be issued without delay, Maurice Payne had said. She reiterated the importance, of course, of the WHO convened scientific study and said, quote, we look forward to the findings from the international field mission to China. Now, Australia, as we have discussed a reasonable amount lately, has dug ourselves into a, rather hefty existential economic hole, when a few of our more loose cannony type, backbenchery type Liberal National Party mouthpieces sought to jump on the Trump train and figuratively twist the knife in China's COVID experience in calling for a finger-pointing crusade under the guise, of course, of an international inquiry into COVID. When of course, America saw a squirrel and moved on to the next subject, Australia was left alone holding the COVID inquiry call, and kind of like a Greenpeace petition holder at an oil drilling convention, we were just left alone, and it caused China to single us out in the face of their, loss of face, if you like.
Yeah, we've been separated from the pack.
We have indeed separated from the herd to be pounced on, and pounced we have been. So, I mean, really, the question that I ask today, Greg, to both you and our listeners is, given all of the news of the trade, embargoes, essentially, the trade stoppages, and the crippling of the Australian economy, both in the short, medium, and most definitely, or most likely anyway, the long term. The question is really, why the hell are we continuing to push their buttons? Isn't there another country out there that can say, I don't know, take the torch from us and push China on this particular issue? Haven't we done enough?
Yeah, I think the thing is that, when you're in I don't know about an abusive relationship, but when you're in a workplace, essentially, that you're not happy in, it's really not a good idea to start going around calling your boss a this and a that. You sort of have to have an exit strategy that goes under the radar a little bit. And I get the feeling that that's what a lot of other countries are doing, is that they're going under the radar. They're sort of, exiting to, Vietnam or Bangladesh or, other countries, and they're sort of starting to get their production done there. Whereas we're sort of overtly going, we're not happy with you, and, they're not happy with us, and we're having a bit of an out and out, very overt war rather than just sort of a trade war, rather than just, going under the radar. What do you think?
Yeah, look, I do agree with you. And I suppose my overwhelming instinct here is that it's probably poor strategy for us to continue pushing these buttons, because it's, this is what got us. I mean, obviously, China had their own reasons for starting the trade stoppages. Sorry, that was an awkward sentence. Starting trade stoppages with Australia. They had their own reasons, but certainly on the face of it, it seems that us, Australian, LNP backbenchers, being, the firebrand individuals that they are, they were the ones that essentially pointed the finger, pushed for an inquiry, and put us in the direct firing line. So to me, it seems that it is very poor strategy to continue to harp on this requirement. Just let the WHO do it. Let the World Health Organization do what they are, monetarily empowered to do, which is to conduct this inquiry among, the many other things that they do. So just let them do it. Let them do it that are set up, that are able, that are staffed to, that have the expertise to perform this kind of thing, and we can sit back and await the outcome of that thing. We've got stuff going on at the World Trade Organization with China. Why don't we focus on that?
Yeah.
Why don't we focus on repairing relations, diplomatic relations with China, and leave this inquiry to the World Health Organization, who have been requested to or have been enabled to or empowered to conduct it.
Yeah, and I do know that it affects people's lives and livelihoods here in Australia, but I do also like the fact that we're one of the only countries who actually stick up to China in the way that we do. I know that we could do a lot more, but at the same time, at least we do. I feel like that sort of emboldens us a little bit. I like the idea of doing the right thing, and I like the idea of I'm not saying I do the right thing, I'm just saying I like the idea of it. And I like the idea of, as a nation, that we get to look back and say we did the right thing when it came to coronavirus. And I think that that's going to be a better approach. I don't know. So I'm sort of torn about, someone like Maurice Payne standing up and saying publicly, you need to get your act together and do the right thing, and staying quiet and letting the process happen because, anyway, I don't know.
My big, I suppose the thing that I would point out here is strategically we have a lot to lose, right?
Yes.
But both in terms of our, the economic stuff, if you put that to one side, we burned a lot of international diplomatic and political capital when Australia called for that COVID inquiry. Not that it was wrong. It's absolutely not wrong, and I'm not saying that it was wrong to request that an appropriate organisation conduct an appropriate inquiry into both how coronavirus occurred and how it proliferated throughout the globe. Those are important so that we can understand, how these things emerge, how they spread, so that we can be perhaps a little bit more prepared in the future, so that it doesn't go as poorly as it has for several countries like the US and throughout Europe. So that's, it's important that occurs. But we burnt a significant amount of political capital when we did that.
Yes. It came at a cost, right? Because that's the situation.
It came at a significant cost.
Well, that's what that's the thing with bullies, isn't it? I mean, they have to have some sort of power over you. You don't get the chance to stick up to them without some sort of consequence. Anyway.
No, I agree with that on the face of it. But I suppose what we have to lose is what happens when that inquiry finds that China did everything appropriately. Yeah, and I'm not saying that that's what's going to happen.
Yeah,
but
that's fine. We accept it and move on.
But we accept exactly. We accept that and move on, knowing that we burnt all of this political capital, that we've lost the Australian economy, billions of dollars over the just the short term billions of dollars for naught.
Yeah. I know what you're saying.
Was it super important for us to get on that particular train? Anyway.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, and probably one without a straight answer either, I guess. Everyone probably has an opinion on that one. Feel free to email us at thepouchthepodcast@gmail.com if you would like to entertain us with your thoughts on Australia-China relations. Jake, I'm going to throw a little bit of a curveball in here.
Oh, God, I love it when you do.
No doubt. It would be remiss of us to just mention the US situation at the moment, speaking of bullies. And just to link it in with Australia, I know that everyone else will be talking about this on every other podcast, so I don't really want to go into the details of the US situation, but just to link it in with us and just Scott Morrison's response, which I am going to argue is a little bit weak. So on the one hand, we're sort of arguing that it's great that we're sticking up to China and that we're saying all these things about China, but that when it came to Donald Trump this week, Scott Morrison has stopped short of criticising Donald Trump. So I'm reading now from an article from Daniel Hurst from the Guardian. It said Scott Morrison refuses to condemn Trump for inciting distressing violence in US Capitol. Australian Prime Minister Scott Morrison says he is hoping for a peaceful transfer of power in the United States as he condemned rioters for terribly distressing acts of violence in storming the Capitol building, but he stopped short of criticising Donald Trump for sending mixed messages when the president asked his supporters to disperse, and also declined to rebuke one of his own backbench MPs for promoting unfounded conspiracy theories over the US presidential election results. So, yeah, I do feel like at this point we need to be saying, we need to be criticising people who are still saying that there's fraud in this election, because it's gone through the channels, it's gone through every court in the nation has rejected every application that they've put in. So I think that it does need to be strongly condemned, because it's a blight on an otherwise quite strong democracy. And, I really can't see them swimming back from that one. However, I think that, I would have liked that if Scott Morrison had been a bit more vocal with his criticisms about that situation. But that's me. What do you think?
Oh, look, I think our current Prime Minister, Scott Morrison, and previous Prime Ministers have been, appropriately quick to condemn when leaders go too far, when leaders of other democratic nations and indeed other communist nations do things that are I'm going to say just patently wrong, and I won't go any further than that. What Trump did was probably quite objectively wrong. From many different angles, particularly just the whole suppression of fact. Is living in this really different universe that he seems to live in. So I think it was absolutely weak to come out and just focus on the next step, which is the transition to power. When you do have what seems to be the leader of an ally, inciting violence, inciting insurrection, inciting sedition, and other things. I completely agree with you that it was a bit weak. I would say there was an interesting tweet sent out by the Labor Party. I don't know if you saw this, but the Labor Twitter account said,
"Oh yeah, this is the company you keep one."
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, dreadful, absolutely dreadful.
It was just silly. It was a photo of Scott Morrison shaking the hand of, saying, some of the order of it's just the, it's the company that you keep.
It was
Scott,
dreadful. It was such a poorly timed, poorly worded, completely irrelevant tweet. I mean, everybody at some stage has pretended to be Donald Trump's friend, even if they didn't like him, for the sake of peace, for the sake of trying to move forward. It's not, and I'm not even saying that's the right thing. I'm just saying that that's what they were doing, to sort of taint him now as though he's even remotely close to being that sort of I don't know. Anyway, I was very disappointed about that tweet, and I saw a lot of people quite angry on Twitter about that particular tweet.
Even Albanese, Anthony Albanese, the leader, who's had his own silly gaffes in the recent history, such as referring to the current recession as the Morrison recession, which was, it's another case of a silly gaffe. Yeah. It's an unforced error, really, in sporting terms. Look, all around, it's bad in the US. Feel very sorry. I've got an American wife, and I feel very, very sorry anytime she's asked, where's your accent from? And she has to say,
go through the motions.
I'm from Ireland. I'm from New Zealand, bro.
All right, Jake, let's spin the wheel of states. Are you ready to spin the wheel?
I'm ready to spin the wheel.
All right, no, I've got the sound effects. You just have to pretend to spin the wheel.
Okay, here we go. You ready? It's just off camera.
Okay, go.
It landed on New South Wales.
New South Wales. Oh, that's weird. This is awkward. All right, so tell us what's happening here. So this is New South Wales they put the rest of Australia at risk by playing the odds. This is from the Australian Medical Association. Dun, dun, dun. I got the feeling we're talking coronavirus, Drake. We're talking.
We are indeed.
Yeah, we're talking. What's the name? Palaszczuk not being very strong.
Oh no, we're talking about Berejiklian.
Sorry, I get those two mixed up occasionally. Let me go again. We're talking Berejiklian not being strong enough with a lockdown over Christmas, trying to give everyone the Christmas we craved and deserved, not trying to be the Grinch. But it was too little, too late.
Well, it was really just a little bit interesting because we had a test case for how that mixed it's the UK, and it didn't go well.
No.
And, the UK in the lead up to Christmas was saying, you should be able to spend your Christmas with your family.
Yes, Christmas wasn't cancelled. It was just going to be different. That was the slogan.
Exactly. But then it was cancelled.
Yes. Then it was
with
cancelled.
Prejudice. With prejudice. And, just the mixed messaging seems to have, worked significantly against the UK and pretty well any country that's employed similar types of tactics.
Yep.
But, you do have to balance things out because situations change, advice changes, et cetera. But this was a really interesting case here because, and the Australian Medical Association, which is Australia's peak medical body, have said that the New South Wales government did put the rest of the country at risk by its decision to not go hard and early in its response to the outbreak in Sydney's northern beaches.
Yes.
And this is really around the Premier, New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian, resisting pressure from really her own health experts to force Sydney both into a lockdown and to mandate masks and to ban crowds at, for example, the Sydney cricket ground, despite the growing number of COVID-19 cases.
Right. So let's just dwell on that for a second, right?
Indeed.
Because we have prided ourselves over the last few months on being a nation who listens to experts and saying, okay, we trust in the experts. And as this gets more complicated, as new strains are discovered, as new clusters appear, we're going to be trusting the experts that we shut down for a little bit and they're still going to take care of us. And they're doing that at the behest of their medical experts. The AMA, if I've got this right, are accusing Gladys of not listening to their peak to the experts and for doing it for political reasons. Is that sort of the gist?
It is indeed. Look,
so it's quite a big accusation, isn't it?
It is a big accusation. It's not an unfounded accusation. A lot of the commentary has been the commentators have suggested that there was very direct advice being given by the health experts within the New South Wales government who were suggesting you need to lock down, you need to mandate masks, and you need to look to do crowd control, limit the number of crowds to limit the spread, et cetera. And that's particularly in light of things like, New Year's was just around the corner, Christmas was just around the corner, things like the Boxing Day test at the Sydney cricket ground, they were all around the corner. And, given the festive season where people do like to catch up with old mates because they've, taken a little bit of time off work. They want to catch up with their old mate Barry who they haven't seen for a while and, give them a hug, give them a nice big. So, essentially the advice was clear and specific, but it seems that the Premier did not follow that advice.
Yeah, okay.
And of course, it's not the first time that had happened. The example that I would provide is where, the advice was always if you get a coronavirus test because you are, suspected of having coronavirus symptoms, then you should quarantine until you get the result.
Yes, I had to do that this week.
Exactly, and as did I last week, actually. Unfortunately, the Premier, I believe it was late November, early December, had the COVID test and headed off for a meeting.
Yeah.
Essentially flouting her own government's rules.
Yeah, and tried to palm it off when she was interviewed on national television about it. She was just sort of like, oh yes, all right, I didn't lock down for the 30 or 45 minutes it took to get the results of the test. Okay, you got me there. And it's just like, yeah, okay, you can't really be relaxed about that sort of stuff when you're in that position.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
You really have to toe the line essentially.
Yeah.
It's super important for perception as much as it is for showing honesty and showing that you do trust your health experts, which again is sort of the thesis of this thing. But either way, the lockdown is over now. I think in the northern beaches, Brisbane was locked down over the weekend. From
did you have to lock down?
I didn't. I'm outside of all of the lockdown areas, but because I do frequent those areas that were locked down, and because I'm a hermit generally out in a country property, I had whether I wanted to or not.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. I know that Victoria is considering opening up their borders again with New South Wales based on the 0 cases over the last couple of days, which is fantastic. Apparently, it's one of the actual specific criticisms from the AMA were also around an over-reliance on contact tracing rather than hard lockdowns. University of Melbourne epidemiologist Professor Tony Blakey said that the key lesson from the New South Wales outbreak was not how it had spread to Victoria, but how it was suspected to have spread from an international arrival to New South Wales, which of course is very topical given that we now have COVID-20, which is what I'm calling it.
Yeah, which is the new strain.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
Rachel, my wife, she read out the full name on the drive home this afternoon, and it sounded almost like something like an R2-D2 or something like Star Wars sort of droid situation. So I just said, look, I think the odds of it
calling it COVID-20.
Yeah, COVID-21 it should be. I would say that, it was discovered last year, wasn't it?
It was most certainly
the COVID-20.
Yeah, so there's 2 other strains that we're sort of managing. One of them is this UK strain, so-called UK strain, and there is another one which is a South African strain.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about the South African strain. Yeah, one of them apparently spreads like 70% better.
Yes, that's the UK one.
Oh, that's insane. I mean, this one spread pretty fast. I don't know.
Spreads like Vegemite on toast.
It really does. It really does.
Marmite, given
especially in our household in the morning. That's all we do. You know, we had to buy one of those massive school camp style Vegemites from Amazon.
Wow. Yeah. That's fantastic. And how quickly did you go through it?
Well, I think it took months to go through it, but it was just so full on. I said, look, I'm just going to buy one of these massive tubs. I can't, it's like a bucket. It's literally a bucket of Vegemite. And it ends up with butter and stuff all in it and jam in it and peanut butter. So gross by the end of it. So we went. It's not something that we're continuing on with because it does get a little bit festy in the old Vegemite bucket.
So. Well, it starts off as yeast. So anyway, mold. Yeah.
All right, spin the wheel, Jake.
All right, here we go. Just off camera. There we go. Oh, yep. Spun. And it looks. It's slowly. It's on New South Wales. What the hell is? Oh no, sorry, it ticked over.
It's literally just
to
New
Western
South
Australia.
Oh, nice work, yay! ACT Miller Mark Parton unwittingly breached WA COVID-19 border rules by failing to declare New South Wales travel. Dun, dun, dun. What's the deets, Jake?
Yeah, well, the Western Australian police have fined a Canberra politician who unwittingly, he says, breached the state's strict border rules, realising 2 days into his stay that he had been into New South Wales before travelling and thus had or should have been locking himself down. The ACT Liberal Mark Parton, he travelled from Canberra to regional Western Australia on Monday of last week to visit his mother, despite having been in New South Wales in the past 14 days. Huh. Of course, he was only, he was in the town of Queanbeyan, which is just over the border of ACT, and not in that hot zone of the the northern beaches, obviously. And he was there for around 4 hours before going back to Canberra to fly over to WA. But yes, upon realising that he was in breach, he immediately said that he began isolating and he contacted the authorities. He said, quote, "I feel pretty stupid." And that was from him on a Facebook post. Now the WA police have charged him with a $1,000 infringement for failing to comply with a direction. Premier Mark McGowan liable to a $50,000 fine or imprisonment. So I just urge people like him to follow the rules. And Greg, I might note that there was another case of a person who was on a boat just off the coast of Perth. Yeah. He was off the port of Perth, and And he jumped off his little boat. He was quarantining on there, waiting for the 14 days before he could.
He was quarantining on a boat.
Disembark.
Gosh,
he was quarantining on a boat, having come from another country.
Yep.
And he jumped off the boat. He was just done with the quarantine. Jumped off the boat, swam to Perth, and upon arrival at Perth, he hopped up, climbed the ladder on the port, and was promptly arrested. And the Premier Mark McGowan said, quote, "That's unusual."
Yes, that is unusual, especially if you're on a... Did he just not bring his boat in because he figured that he could get ashore without being busted easier than bringing his boat back in?
No, he was on a very big boat with a number of people. You know, he was on a big carrier boat.
He wasn't just on a little dinghy or something.
No, they were on forced quarantine for 14 days while, essentially.
Oh, I see. Right. So he's in one of these travel boats and they've said, no, you're not coming into the port. And then he's jumped off.
Yeah. Yeah. But I would say, Greg, and look, maybe it's a little bit of, naivete, but if you're able to swim, up to a kilometre, I would suggest that you probably don't have an infection festering in your lungs.
Yeah, it's pretty bizarre, isn't it? Like, that's a pretty bizarre thing to be doing. Anyway.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right. Well,
Look, he was just super keen to get to, what's that port town?
Adelaide.
No. The
Port Kembla.
What's that? No, the really lovely port area in it's just south of Perth.
Port.
Lovely place.
Yeah, that's where they took the HMAS whatever during the bushfires.
No.
Yep.
I don't think so. Oh, was it? Maybe.
Yeah.
No. You're thinking of the Penguin place. I'm thinking of. Anyway, it's a lovely place that I'm thinking of. Just read my mind, listeners.
Classic South Australians.
Yeah.
Hey?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's probably got a church on it, doesn't it?
I'm talking about in Perth, in
Perth.
Western Australia.
Oh, I'm thinking of South Australia.
I just can't think of the name of the place.
It's not awkward at all.
No.
Rachel lived in Western Australia. I could ask her.
Yeah, just ask her. What's the name of that really cool place?
Rach. She'll have her headphones on. She doesn't care. Anyway. Oh, dear. All right, Jake. Well, that's all we've got on the script. Is there anything else on your mind? Is there anything else they're burning at your loins?
No, I think my loins are, reasonably satisfied.
Okay, that's good. Let's
with the outcomes of this week.
Once our listeners have figured out, whether or not they're also okay with everything that's going on at the moment, What would you like them to do?
Look, I'd love it if they could, subscribe to the podcast if they've just heard us incidentally.
Yes.
They were just walking past, their friend who was blasting it on their car stereo, and they're like, "Oh, I like the sound of that guy's voice."
Oh yeah.
But not Jake.
No.
The Greg guy. He's got a lovely dulcet tones. Yeah, but look, if they've just walked past their friend who was playing on the car, love it if they could subscribe. Love it if they could rate and review. That's how you really do us a favour. You rate and review us because it helps us to be seen on podcast aggregators. And, of course, become a patron. We love our patrons. They keep the lights on here in the studios, in the various studios around Australia.
Mm-hmm. I'm literally using an iPhone as my light today, but that's fine.
Well, they keep the iridescence glowing.
I do. And we do love our iridescence here.
We do. Yeah, look, if you are able to do so, we would greatly appreciate it if you could go to patreon.com, patreon.com/thepouch-the-podcast to consider becoming a patron. If you're not ready for that level of intimacy, why not rate and review? That'd be great.
And if you want to share the love, you can tell your friends, families, or foes to head to thepouchthepodcast.com where they can choose their favourite podcast player of choice and subscribe that way. That's it, Jake. The first show of the year. Congratulations. Is that it?
You just, sorry, you glitched out there for a second.
Okay, well, let me go again. I hate you, Jake, and I never want to do this podcast again.
Wow.
No, that's the first show of the year. Done and dusted.
It is.
How do you feel about it? Good?
What a way. Yeah, no, look, I think that was fantastic.
Yeah, it was good. It played very well. Let us know what you think of the new format, where we have a bit of a warm-up first with a couple of interesting stories. We go into some federal politics and then some state politics. We'll add a little bit of a structure to the show. Obviously, lots of different things happening around the world, so we hope that you have had a chance to have a listen to us just to get your fix of Australian news and politics, not so seriously. Jake, I will speak to you again, I don't know.
Pretty soon.
Whenever I want. I do whatever I want.
Yeah, exactly. It's my party. I'll cry if I want to.
Hello to everyone else who's our new listeners, and we'll see you again very, very soon.
Same bat time, same bat channel. We don't have channels.
But we don't eat bats.
And we don't eat bat. Oh.
See you, man.